Josh Williams will run select NASCAR Cup Series races with Kaulig Racing in 2024, and NASCAR is getting closer to hosting an international NASCAR Cup Series race. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight on those really quickly. For first, go ahead and take a look at a ton of paint schemes that have been revealed over the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is John Hunter Nemechek's 2024 Dollar Tree scheme that we'll see throughout 2024. This scheme is pretty solid in my opinion. I do like the colors. It's kind of retro as well. I think it's a solid paint scheme, and I'm looking forward to see on the racetrack this weekend at the Coliseum. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Eric Jones' 2024 Family Dollar scheme. This scheme's alright in my opinion. I like this definitely better than the John Hunter Nemechek scheme for sure. Kind of similar to John Hunter's. It's kind of a retro Toyota scheme. I think it looks solid overall in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Mark Truex Jr.'s 2024 Bass Pro Shops scheme. This is pretty good in my opinion. Not as good as last year's, but it's still really solid. I think the new Toyota nose works very well on it. I think did a good job on it as well. Looking forward to see on the racetrack this season. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Corey LaJoie's 2024 Celsius scheme. Not a massive fan of this paint scheme, to be honest. I know it's kind of similar to AJ Allmendinger's. I liked Allmendinger's better than Corey LaJoie's. Granted, it's kind of similar to Allmendinger's, but I'm not a massive fan of this paint scheme. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Christopher Bell's 2024 MobileOne scheme. I gotta say, this is in the running for best scheme of the year. This looks phenomenal. I thought this is a rendering, but this is the real thing, and it looks phenomenal and incredible. And it's 1000% my favorite Christopher Bell scheme that I have ever seen before. Excited to see it on the racetrack this season in 2024. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is what is supposedly Michael McDowell's 2024 Horizon Hobby scheme. This looks good in my opinion, very similar to last year's, and really happy and glad to see nonetheless that Horizon Hobby once again will be working with Michael McDowell in 2024. Very happy that that company is going to be returning. I think it's a great company overall, and nonetheless really happy to see that they are going to be returning once again in 2024. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Pat Tryson. As it was announced earlier today that Pat Tryson will crew chief the number 78 for BJ McLeod Motorsports in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Pat Tryson has been a veteran crew chief in NASCAR for many years. He's crew chief for Mark Martin, crew chief I think for maybe Rusty Wallace at one point as well, crew chief for Ricky Rudd back in 2003, and also crew chief I believe for Anthony Alfredo a few years ago. This is a really good pickup, and also it's really good to see that BJ McLeod Motorsports is once again back in Xfinity in 2024. There was a lot of uncertainty if this team was going to be back for this year, but glad to see that Pat Tryson does have a job for 2024. He's a really one of the better crew chiefs currently in the showbiz. He's really exciting, and I'm glad to see that Pat Tryson does have a crew chiefing job this year. I think he'll do a good job with BJ McLeod Motorsports in hopes to bring BJ McLeod up to light. They showed a lot of improvement last year, and Anthony Alfredo had some solid performances. I think that Pat Tryson will do a very awesome and overall a very good job with BJ McLeod Motorsports in the 2024 NASCAR Xfinity Series season. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Bristol Motor Speedway. Now, someone asked a question about what is Bristol doing in regards to a potential throwback weekend. According to Bob Pockers, Bristol Motor Speedway could in fact be doing some sort of throwback weekend for 2024. Meaning there's a chance and possibility that there could be as many as 2 throwback weekends in 2024. Because remember, Darlington also is going to be hosting a throwback race as well, like they've done for about 10 years since all the way back in 2015. Obviously, they've only been doing a spring race since that return in 2021. Now, Bristol potentially hosting a throwback race is very interesting. I would have thought maybe North Wilkesboro would have had a throwback race, considering the fact that North Wilkesboro is a throwback track. I think that track should be getting a throwback race more than Bristol, in my opinion. There's a lot of things about Bristol that are historic, so that's probably one of the reasons why there's a lot of talk and consideration that this might end up happening, where it might host a throwback race. I hope it does happen. I think there's some really classic moves. Hell, we get Austin Dillon to drive the 3 car and Kyle Larson the 5. They could get a throwback to Terry Labonte's scheme, and Austin Dillon could run a throwback to Dale Earnhardt's scheme, though that would probably be a little disrespectful. It's interesting to look at, though, and it's kind of cool to see that they're having talks and conversations about doing a potential throwback race. Really interesting and really exciting. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about MobileOne. As it was announced earlier today that MobileOne has officially expanded with Toyota. And they'll be working with Bubba Wallace, Christopher Bell, John Hunter Nemechek, Tyler Reddick, Chandler Smith, Taylor Gray, Brent Cruz, Isabella Robusto, Buddy Kofoid, and Jade Avedisian in 2024. This has been teased over the course of the last couple of days. If you've been following on social media, you have probably seen this golden ticket thing that MobileOne has been doing. It's really exciting that MobileOne is expanding their partnership with Toyota. They've been with Toyota for many, many years. They, of course, have sponsored multiple drivers. They're going to sponsor Chandler Smith for a ton of races. Bubba Wallace will have a paint scheme, primary scheme at COTA. Tyler Reddick is going to have multiple primary paint schemes throughout 2024. And Christopher, I believe, will have a MobileOne primary scheme, which you guys have probably already seen on the screen, for multiple races this season as well. A lot of drivers getting partnered up with MobileOne. It's really good for all these organizations and teams that they're going to be getting this in 2024. And I think it's really cool and awesome to see that MobileOne is expanding their partnership with Toyota for 2024. Pretty exciting and awesome stuff. Congratulations to them on getting an expansion with that. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Alpha Prime Racing. As on Saturday, Alpha Prime Racing confirmed their 2024 crew chief lineup. So Mike Hillman Sr. is going to be the crew chief for Ryan Ellis in the 43 team in 2024. And Frank Kerr, who I believe had maybe worked with Alpha Prime Racing last season, will be crew chief for Brendan Poole, who joins Alpha Prime Racing in the number 44 car in 2024. This is a massive and a huge pickup for Alpha Prime Racing, bringing Mike Hillman Sr. in. He is one of the more veteran crew chiefs in the sport. I think he may have won championships in trucks. I could be wrong on that. I think he might have won a championship with Todd Bodine back in the day. And like I said, he's also crew chief for multiple different teams as well. This is a really great opportunity for Mike Hillman Sr. and also Frank Kerr as well. Both veteran crew chiefs in the sport who've been around and been doing this for a very, very long time. They both well deserve this opportunity to be crew chiefing. They've earned it. They've earned the right to have the opportunity to do this. And I'm very happy that both of them will get the crew chief for them. We've known Alpha Prime Racing is trying to improve their stuff and improve their equipment for 2024. I think bringing both these guys in, and the drivers are bringing full-time next year as well, I think it will really help their organization and team for 2024. Really exciting and really awesome stuff overall. Pretty exciting to see for sure. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Red Bull. Now, we've talked about Red Bull quite a bit on this channel over the course of the last couple weeks. But a big reason why I've been talking about it is because of the fact that Red Bull has continued to be associated with Shane Van Gisbergen. In a photo that was posted this weekend, Shane Van Gisbergen had a Red Bull hat on once again. Now, Red Bull has had a massive and a huge connection with Shane Van Gisbergen for many, many years. They were with Shane Van Gisbergen during his supercar years when he was in the Repco Supercar Series. Obviously, he's no longer in Repco Supercars as he's going to be running full-time with Trackhouse Racing in NASCAR, part-time Cup, and full-time with Kaulig Racing in the Xfinity Series. I'm thinking, because they've been with him, I'm thinking, could there be a chance and possibility that we might end up seeing a Red Bull car or a paint scheme? I think there is a chance that this could happen now, considering the fact that they continue to be teams associated with Shane Van Gisbergen. And honestly, I'm here for it. I want to see them sponsor because it's been a long time. I think only back in 2011 was the last time they sponsored, because remember, Red Bull left the sport at the end of 2011 when there was a lot of rumors about manufacturer conflict. At the time, Red Bull was working with Infinity, and obviously they were working with Toyota as well in NASCAR, and Toyota and Infinity had a conflict all the way back in 2011. I think it'd be really cool to see him sponsor Shane Van Gisbergen in the Cup Series, or we'll probably have an endorsement deal and branding with him this year. But I do believe there is a chance and possibility that they might go out there and just sponsor him in 2024, which I think if that does end up happening, I'll be very excited and ecstatic and very, very happy about it. So I really hope it does end up happening. They work with him in 2024 in the Cup Series. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Andretti Global. Now, there was a motorsports.com article and tweet that came out earlier today talking about Andretti Global. As according to Nick Chester, who's working heavily with Andretti Global, they're working toward a Formula One debut. And they are hoping to go Formula One racing as early as 2025. but they do indicate that they could go Formula One racing as late as 2026. It's also heavily rumored that Otmar Sazvener, who of course was one of the older team principals, is heavily linked to Andretti Global as well. We already know that the FIA has approved Andretti Global to come over to Formula One. Obviously, F1 teams also have to approve it, and they're against it, even though there are multiple drivers in Formula One, like Max Verstappen and like Lewis Hamilton, who are for bringing Andretti Global into Formula One. And a big reason why I think they're for it is because, like most of us, I think Andretti Global coming into Formula One is only going to make Formula One a lot better. And I know there's a lot of teams like Haas that are against him, but let's be honest, what has Haas done in Formula One? They haven't done much. I think Andretti will have massive and huge implications long-term for Formula One. One, there's a lot of talk that if they do come to Formula One, Colton Herta more than likely will be one of the drivers. Colton Herta does want to come to Formula One. We know this for a fact. He does need to get a super license, and we do know that multiple people have been trying to court Colton Herta over to Formula One, but unfortunately, they have not been able to budge to get him over. Also, Pat O'Rourke could be a potential possibility if he does leave McLaren in the future and no longer is reserve driver at some point. That could also be a potential possibility. But as of right now, I think a lot of us want to see them. Maybe even Kyle Kirkwood as well. I think we all want to see an all-American organization. Yes, Haas is owned by an American, but they have Ferrari. And they no longer have Gunther Steiner there anymore, which Gunther Steiner spoke over the weekend to Jordan Bianchi and says he doesn't know what he's doing in the future, hoping to have something, though, for the near future. I really hope this does happening. I want Andretti Global to come over to Formula One. I think it'd be huge for the sport. I think it'd be very successful for the sport, and things would go very, very well if they were able to join Formula One. I hope they get approved, and I hope they do end up joining Formula One here in 2025. Though more than likely, in my opinion, I think the earliest it'll be in Formula One is more than likely in the 2026 campaign. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the IndyCar TV deal. As according to Adam Stern, using a football analogy, CEO Mark Miles says the series is on the 50-yard line of its media rights deal talks, and the Penske executives are pleased so far. According to them, the four biggest networks that are in the running for the next media rights deal are NBC, which currently owns the rights, CW, Fox, and Apple TV. Obviously, IndyCar's deal, I believe, either goes through 2024 or 2025, and they're in the middle of negotiations. Now, one thing that doesn't be noted is that there are some executives that are really not pleased with the progress of IndyCar, and they're wanting the things to change, and they were being a little bit harsh, but also, I think, very, very fair. Now, speaking of the IndyCar TV deal, my best guess is more than likely in the middle of this year, they're probably going to have this TV deal done. If I were a betting man, I think it's going to come down to 2 or 3 of these networks. I think Apple would be a solid choice, but not an insane amount of people have Apple TV. I think it's going to come down to Fox, the CW, and NBC. And I still think NBC is the front runner, considering that IndyCar has been on NBC for a very, very long time, going all back to 2009 when it was Versus, and then when they switched to NBC-SN around 2011 and 2012. I think that they are going to stay on NBC more than likely with this TV deal. But I also think the CW is potentially the second front runner. Considering the fact that IndyCar does have their documentary on the CW, I think there's a really good chance that they are going to go there as well. Maybe they'll do a double where they go to IndyCar and CW in the same year. We'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to this TV deal, because I think more information will come out in regards to this deal in the not-so-distant future. But nonetheless, at least we get a little more update in regards to this TV deal when it comes to IndyCar. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Pitbull. As it was announced on Friday afternoon that Pitbull will perform a pre-race concert at the Daytona 500. Pitbull, who's one of the biggest artists in the world currently at the moment, and also one of the co-owners of Trackhouse Racing, it's a lot easier to get someone like Pitbull, who of course is one of the co-owners of the organization. But Pitbull is someone who brings a big party. He's also done pre-race concerts for the Busch Light Clash in the first year in 2022. So he's probably going to be able to bring that massive and huge party that NASCAR is looking for as well. And it's kind of a little bit of a change up, considering the last couple years with the Daytona 500. Really, for a long time, they've had a lot of country music artists like Luke Combs, who right now is one of the bigger artists in the world, but I think bringing someone in and changing up the way they're doing it for Daytona 500 makes a lot of sense, and it's easy to get someone who's part of the sport currently at the moment. I'm not massively shocked by this news. It's cool to see that Pitbull is going to be doing the pre-race concert. I think he's going to bring the energy. I think he's going to bring the excitement. And nonetheless, I'm very happy and glad to see that Pitbull will, in fact, be doing the pre-race concert for the Daytona 500. It's something a little different. I'd like to see maybe Morgan Wallen do a pre-race concert in the future. But in all honesty, in all seriousness, glad to see that he will be doing the pre-race concert, that being Pitbull, for the Daytona 500. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about The Rock. As it was announced on Monday evening that The Rock will be the Grand Marshal for the Daytona 500. Obviously, if you've been paying attention to the NFL previews for the Daytona 500, when you've been seeing those Daytona 500 commercials, you have probably seen The Rock in those commercials, which is why seeing him now being the Grand Marshal and giving the command makes a ton of sense. Another big reason why, though, is because of the UFL. Remember, Fox is basically hosting, I believe, the UFL, which is the United Football League, which is with that new league that came back about a year or two ago, and then the XFL and other company that is part of that as well, that got into the UFL. I believe that The Rock will be able to bring a ton of energy. I think they'll do an amazing job giving the command, and bringing someone who's already part of the Fox family does make a ton of sense. I think they'll do a solid and a very, very good job giving the command for the Daytona 500. They'll bring that energy. They'll bring that excitement, which you need someone for the Daytona 500. You need someone who's going to bring that energy and excitement like Matthew McConaughey did back in 2005. I want to see the energy and excitement for these Daytona 500s, and I think that nonetheless, I do believe that The Rock will be able to smell what he's cooking and also be able to do a really solid job giving the command for the 500. I'm excited about this and glad to see that he will be giving the command for this year's 2024 Daytona 500. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Michael McDowell. Now, I've already talked about on the other video that Connor Slish was able to win his class in the Rolex 24, and I also already talked about the Rolex 24. But I believe Farmer Motorsports on Saturday, right before the race happened, they put out a tweet showing Michael McDowell, I believe, finishing on the podium in the Rolex 24, and them indicating maybe they want to run it again. Well, Michael McDowell quote tweeted that on Saturday before the race took place, and he is interested in wanting to run the Rolex 24 again. Like I mentioned, Michael McDowell has ran the Rolex 24 multiple different times. I think he ran it back in 2008. I also think he ran it back in 2009 and 2010. And I think he finished, like I mentioned, on the podium. And it's really cool to see that Michael McDowell wants to run the Rolex 24 again. And I don't think he's the only driver that wants to run the Rolex 24. Now, obviously, Ford does not have a car currently that is in the overall class. But you do have to remember, they do have a GT class. And obviously, they debuted the new Ford Mustangs that they debuted with a couple of those teams in the GTD Pro and the GTD AM class, or just a regular GTD. So I could honestly see them, if Michael McDowell was wanting to run the Rolex 24, I could see them running it with Michael McDowell and a couple other NASCAR Cup Series drivers, like maybe Joey Logano perhaps, maybe Ryan Blaney. Maybe Haley Deegan, perhaps, because she does have some GT experience in the TCR events in the Michelin Pilot Challenge. Maybe they go get her to run. And maybe they have Mike Rockefeller and Joey Hand working with them as well. I think it'd be really cool to see Ford have a GT NASCAR car for the Rolex 24. Now, obviously, with how the schedules are, and with the Busch Light Clash being the week after the Rolex, that is definitely going to be a lot harder to do. But I remember Austin Cindric in 2022, I think he ran in the LMP2 class, and remember, he ran the Busch Light Clash, even though I don't think he made the main event or show, unfortunately, in 2022. But I would love to see Michael McDowell run the Rolex 24 again. I think it'd be exciting to see him. He's a really awesome road course racer. Again, Ford does not have a main car. They used to back in 2015 and 2016 when they had guys like Kyle Larson and the Riley MK cars. Because it's been a while since a lot of NASCAR drivers have done it, and I want to see more NASCAR drivers compete in the Rolex 24 like it was back in 2004 and 2005. I really hope they decide to do this in the future. McDowell's getting close to the end of his career, so maybe after he does retire from NASCAR in the near future, maybe he does, in fact, go to Rolex and does that. But as of right now, I think he should definitely do it here relatively soon. So I think it'd be really fun to see him do the Rolex 24 soon. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Formula One. Now, if you saw this on social media last weekend, right before the Rolex 24 happened, you saw from Red Bull Racing Daily and a lot of different pages showing that Formula One has trademarked everything with a thing called the F1 Grand Prix of Chicago, indicating that Formula One is trying to go to Chicago and host another United States-based race. Now, that would not be such a problem if they were not going to be going up against NASCAR, because there is already a NASCAR Chicago Street Course race that is going on that has a current 3-year deal. Now, granted, it's unclear if they will go past 2024 and they could break that contract at the end of this year. But the biggest problem with F1 trying to come in is that they would have to host 2 races if they were to do this. And here's the problem. They stated recently in articles they would have to choose between one or the other. If you want my honest opinion, when it comes to situation, I am not a fan of Formula One doing this. There's a couple reasons. One, NASCAR already has a presence in Chicago. Formula One does not need to be in Chicago. They've already got other tracks. 2, they have 3 U.S.-based tracks already. Granted, I think the contract with COTA only goes through 2026 right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do expand that and continue working with them past 2026. So if they keep 3 U.S. tracks like they currently have right now, and they go to another one, that's going to be 4 U.S.-based tracks. And it's already rumored as well that New York City is in a running for a day as well in Formula One. We don't need more U.S. tracks. A lot of F1 fans are tired of the Americanization of Formula One. 3, like I said, NASCAR is a massive presence there, and F1 does not need to add another track. I really hope that the aldermen and the people living in Chicago make the right decision and right call, and they decide, we don't want Formula One here, let's keep NASCAR here, because 1, the racing product in NASCAR is 1,000 times better, and I'd rather watch a NASCAR race on a street course, considering the first one we had a really solid race, we got a first-time winner. You're not going to get that in Formula One. You're probably going to get Max Verstappen winning the event, even a few years down the road. They're filing for 2026 a few years down the road. I really hope that the city of Chicago is like, no, you're not getting a race here in Chicago. You've already got a NASCAR race here, at least for a few more years. So in my opinion, I hope they shut it down. I hope they don't have it happen. And overall, I really hope they were smart enough to say, hey, we're not doing this. We're not going to bring you back in because we don't need another race here. But that is my honest opinion on that. I really hope they make the right decision and the right call when it comes to this. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about MobileOne. Now, earlier in this episode, I talked about the fact that MobileOne was going to be expanding their partnership with Toyota. But a lot of people have indicated that they thought that MobileOne, because of their expansion with their partnership with Toyota, that they were going to be leaving Stewart-Haas Racing. Well, that is not true. According to Bob Pockers and MobileOne themselves, they have confirmed that they are still going to be with Stewart-Haas Racing in 2024. They'll obviously be a sponsor for Josh Berry for multiple races this season, also be an associate sponsor for all the Stewart-Haas Racing drivers. First of all, this is really good news to hear because obviously one of the biggest storylines and headlines that's been going on during this offseason is a lot of the things that Stewart-Haas Racing has lost. Kevin Harvick's retired, Eric Almirol's with Joe Gibbs Racing, and they've also lost a ton of massive and huge sponsorship. They lost Busch Beer. They, of course, lost Smithfield. They lost GoBowling.com. They've also lost a couple of other big brands and sponsorships to other companies, including Gear Rush. That's another company that is no longer working with Stewart-Haas Racing. So at least one of the big SHR companies is going to be sticking around. But I am still very worried about Stewart-Haas Racing going into this year. Even though they would at least keep one of their sponsors, and probably a couple other sponsors, because Sunny D, they're sticking around. And granted, Josh Berry is bringing Harrison's in. It seems like Josh Berry is in the best position when it comes to sponsorship, more than anybody else at that team right now, even though he still has a lot of races currently unsponsored. But my biggest issue I have with Stewart-Haas Racing at the moment, when it comes to sponsorship, is you need sponsors to be able to perform at a really high level. Especially with the lack of drivers, and there's a lot of good drivers at the team, but the lack of issues. We know that Tony Stewart's been a lot more involved with the organization and team, but I am very worried about SHR's long-term future. But at least having MobileOne stick around, at least for now, that's at least some sort of positive, because if they lost MobileOne, they would have lost almost 70 or 75 races altogether. Granted, they've gotten some of that back, but they have lost a lot of sponsorship and a lot of funding for this year, which is disappointing. But hey, if there's a positive, at least they're still going to have MobileOne in NASCAR. And at least it's Stewart-Haas Racing. Even though they're expanding their partnership with Toyota, we're still going to see them be in NASCAR with Stewart-Haas Racing in 2024. Glad to see MobileOne sticking around to work with Josh Ferry, and will be associated with Noah Gragson, Ryan Preece, and Chase Briscoe. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about SS Greenlight Racing. Now, if you were on social media earlier this evening, you saw SS Greenlight Racing put a teaser announcement out. And according to them, there is going to be an announcement that is coming from SS Greenlight Racing tomorrow, which is Thursday. Now, SS Greenlight Racing has not confirmed their 2024 plans, but like I mentioned, they like what this announcement likely will be. On Thursday is going to be a driver lineup announcement, potentially multiple different drivers. So, okay, let's talk about who could be potential candidates here. Well, one of them is J.J. Yeley. J.J. Yeley has stated recently that he does have a ride and he's close to announcing his 2024 plans. And according to the Daily Downforce, they've been told that this is one of the organizations that J.J. Yeley has been heavily linked to. So J.J. Yeley could definitely be one of the drivers that could go here. Considering J.J. Yeley is going to be focusing a lot more racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this year, I would imagine this is going to be one of the teams and organizations. The second driver could be someone like a Frankie Muniz. Frankie Muniz has teased on Twitter very recently that he does have something already planned for 2024. He does already plan to run the Xfinity Series race or the ARCA race at Daytona, and he's ready to go for it on February 17th. Could this be that potential ride? Considering the fact that basically he's been, because SS Greenlight, they've had Fords in the past, or they have been with Chevy recently, maybe they're going to switch to Ford so Frankie can work with them, and maybe SS Greenlight gets an SHR alliance. Another driver could be Brett Moffitt. Brett Moffitt has driven for SS Greenlight Racing in a couple races before. And remember, Brett Moffitt is currently not signed at all for 2024 because we know AM Racing, they're not going to be running that 25 car full-time this year. We all thought maybe Matt Benedetto was going to go there, but that's not going to be the case. And Brett Moffitt is still a free agent. So maybe him. And maybe Matt Benedetto could be a candidate as well for this seat, which would not be a bad ride. But Matt Benedetto said he doesn't have a ride, so I don't know if he's going to be a candidate. If you want my opinion, it's either going to be Frankie Muniz or J.J. Yeley, who I think is going to be in the seat. There's not a lot of other major free agents out there that are currently left available, and most of the big-name free agents like Roger Carruth are signed more than likely for this season. It is going to be very interesting to see who SS Greenlight decides to go ahead and put behind the wheel of this seat in 2024. My best guess is they're going to have two cars this year, probably the 07 and 08 car for 2024. It'll be very interesting to see who they decide to choose for 2024 behind the wheel. We're going to most likely find out who will be behind the wheel of this car in 2024 and what manufacturer they will be working with in the 2024 NASCAR Xfinity Series season. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jensen Button. Now on Friday, there was an article that came out from motorsports.com, and I believe Jim Utter, who was the person who reported on this, according to Jim Utter, Jensen Button apparently had an opportunity to run the Chicago Street Course race once again in 2024, and apparently had been a very good opportunity. But unfortunately, he had to turn it down because of how busy his schedule is. We'll get to speculating where he might have been going in just a second, but this does not surprise or shock me that he's had to unfortunately turn it down. Look, Jensen Button is going to be a very busy man in 2024. He's going to be very committed to Sky Sports, covering a lot of Formula One races this year, and also is going to be running full-time in the World Endurance Championship in 2024, along with also racing in select IMSA races throughout the 2024 season. Now, would I like to see Jensen Button run the Chicago Street Course race again? Absolutely, but he's got a lot of commitments going into this year, so that does not surprise me. Now, where could have Jensen Button gone to? I think there's only about 3 or 4 organizations that I could have seen Jensen Button going to. The first one is 2311 Racing and the number 67 car. It's already been teased, and we talked about it earlier today, that 2311 Racing is looking to run a third car at some point this year. I would imagine that they actually approached Jensen Button about running in this seat. And also considering the fact that I think Acura and Toyota may have a little bit of alliance to some certain degrees, I would imagine that that might have been one of the teams that had talked to them. Another organization I would think is RFK Racing. RFK Racing with the Stage 60 program that's planning to run quite a few races this season. That's one organization I definitely think talked to them because it's a really good team. Another organization is Legacy Motor Club. This one I think is one of the higher up chances because one, it is a Toyota organization, and also number two, another big reason is because of the fact that Jensen Button drove with Jimmy Johnson in the same organization in the Garage 56 entry. And we do know that Jimmy Johnson is not running the Chicago Street Course race this year, so this car would have been available for Jensen Button. I know some people suggest the number 15 car, but I think Hasbro had those seats. Maybe also Trackhouse Racing as well. Could have been another option, definitely, for sure. But I don't think Trackhouse would have been an option at this point, considering I think Shane Van Gisbergen is going to be driving either the number 91 car or the 97. But I will tell you what, it is a shame that he's not going to get the opportunity or chance to run in the Chicago Street Course event because he was actually pretty good, at least in the first half of the event. Unfortunately, got turned by Joey Logano coming to pit row, but I still think he finished in the top 20 in the Street Course event, and that top 5 and top 10 speeds on a pretty consistent basis. And I think he actually would do a good job if he had a really good car to go with. Again, my best guess right now is probably the 67 or probably the Project 91 entry or Legacy Motor Club was the organization that he was looking to drive for. I think we all do want to see him come back, and we do want to see him go and race in NASCAR again because he was really fun to listen to race. He ran 3 Cup Series races last year, but again, he has a lot of major commitments going into 2024. So as much as it sucks to see that he will not be racing in NASCAR this year, at least as an hour running the Chicago Street Course race this year, it doesn't shock me or surprise me that he's not doing it considering he's got a lot of commitments currently at this particular moment. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of 2 major stories of today's episode as we're talking about international racing. Now, yesterday there was an Motorsports article that came out talking about a potential international racing. And according to, I believe it was Jim Utter who reported on this, NASCAR is getting closer to hosting International Cup Series races in the not-so-distant future. And it may happen as early as 2025 or 2026. And this is according to Chad Siegler. Obviously, they've had a lot of presence in the past in Australia. They've also raced in Montreal with the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And they also have raced in other countries like Japan as well. Now, NASCAR actually came very, very close to racing internationally in the Cup Series for the first time since 1958 in Toronto with going to Montreal. There was a lot of rumors last year that Montreal was going to be part of the NASCAR Cup Series schedule. However, that did not end up happening in 2024 because of certain conflicts, and I think a big reason is because the Montreal Formula One race got moved to a little bit earlier in the year, because remember the F1 race used to be, I think, in late June. Now the F1 race is in the first or second week of June, which would have been the same weekend as the NASCAR weekend, and it's believed that I was coming in because Montreal was not unfortunately happening. But I think a lot of us fans want to see a track like Montreal come onto the NASCAR Cup Series schedule. Considering the fact that Montreal is a really awesome and great racetrack, I really hope that Montreal gets a chance and opportunity to come in the future. But you think about international racing and such. This doesn't surprise me. There's a lot of talk about this. We've also seen the Garage 56 entry, which was a next-gen car. We saw that internationally in France at Le Mans. And I think NASCAR, with their international exploration, they're looking to go to different countries. And I think they're going to start with Canada or Mexico. But this is not just NASCAR looking at this. Every major sport is doing this. The MLB's been going to London. They've been going to Mexico as well. The NFL has been going basically to London. They've been going, I think, to Paris, France. I think they've gone to Mexico as well. They've gone a lot of countries abroad. Basically, the LA League of Golf, or whatever golfing segment it is in Saudi Arabia. You've got a lot of these big companies, the same with Formula One, who's integrating into the United States pretty quickly. You're starting to see more of this international presence. Like I mentioned and said, I think if NASCAR goes international, they're going to start with basically Canada and Mexico is where they are going to start. Again, I think Montreal is the most likely, but also Canadian Tire could be another option. If the Truck Series doesn't want to go to Montreal, they could go back to Canadian Tire, considering the fact they hosted races there from 2013 to 2019. Obviously, they were supposed to race in 2020, but due to COVID-19 restrictions, they were not allowed to do that. And then in Mexico, you have the Autodromo Hernando Rodriguez track, which also hosts Formula One races and hosted NASCAR Xfinity Series races from 2005 to 2008. I think NASCAR is going to continue to grow their international presence in the world and continue to work to going international. Again, I think NASCAR eventually wants to go overseas, maybe go to Japan, maybe go to the UK and race in tracks like Brands Hatch or Silverstone perhaps, maybe go into France, maybe race in some of those tracks in Germany, maybe at the Hockenheim Ring, maybe at Nuremberg Ring. That would be definitely really cool to see them do that, or maybe race at Spa-Francorchamps, maybe in Belgium. That could be definitely something that is a massive possibility and something to watch out for sure in regards to the possibility of international racing. But do I think NASCAR will go international in 2025? Yes, I think NASCAR is going to go overseas and announce a new track. And my early prediction right now when it comes to going international is definitely Montreal. Like I said, considering the fact that there's been a lot of interest and talk about going to Montreal, and they almost had it happen in 2024. There's already some talk maybe that could happen in 2025. I think NASCAR is going to go ahead and say, you know what, we're going to go international, and we're going to go ahead and go to Montreal. We'll see what happens in regards to that if they do, in fact, end up doing it. But I think NASCAR in the not-so-distant future could be going international Cup Series racing not too far down the road. It's been a long time since this happened. I think NASCAR will, in fact, be going international here in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Josh Williams. As it was announced yesterday that Josh Williams will be going Cup Series racing in 2024, driving number 16 car for Kaulig Racing in select Cup Series races in 2024. He's going to drive the number 16 car at the Busch Light Clash. It was also confirmed in the press release as well that he'll be racing at Atlanta Motor Speedway as well, which confirms the schedule for Kaulig at the moment. We'll have Josh Williams in the 16 at the Clash. Then you're going to, of course, have AJ Allmendinger in the 16 at Daytona. And then Josh Williams be back behind the wheel at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Now, the number of races that Josh Williams will be behind the wheel of the number 16 car is not disclosed, but I would imagine it will be for quite a few races throughout the 2024 Cup Series season. Remember, why is he getting the opportunity? Well, a big reason is because of the fact that Josh Williams, of course, this year is joining Kaulig Racing in the Xfinity Series full-time in the number 11 car, which is the best opportunity he has ever had. I think there's a lot of people that are basically complaining about it, saying, oh, he's a paid driver, he doesn't deserve this opportunity, and I completely disagree. Look, is Josh Williams the greatest driver in the world? No, absolutely not. But he's always overachieved in the equipment that he has been in. And I think he's paid his dues and has earned the right to get this opportunity, even make some select Cup Series starts. I thought there was a chance that this was going to happen. And I think he'll do a very, very good job. And maybe, just maybe down the road, if Josh Williams can impress or not, maybe he gets an opportunity if Kaulig was ever expand a third full-time car. Maybe they could put Josh Williams behind the wheel of a third full-time Kaulig Cup Series car. That might be a little extreme, or maybe put him full-time into 16. Considering he does have sponsorship and funding with him with Alloy Employer, I think that would be a great opportunity for him. Now, what are my expectations? Realistically, I think Josh will do okay. He's a good short track racer. I think he will absolutely outperform Daniel Hemrick at the Clash, but I'm a little worried about Kaulig Racing's short track program. It's no secret that Kaulig Racing's short track program has not been amazing over the last couple of seasons, and they have not been great or fantastic. They struggled last year. Allmendinger did not run very well at the Clash last year, and of course Justin Haley was good, but not great. I think that they're going to be struggling a little bit this year in 2024. But with Josh Williams driving, who else could be a potential possibility to drive a 16 car? There was conversation about Matt DiBenedetto, but I don't think Matt DiBenedetto is going to be in a Cup Series car at all this year. He almost had an opportunity. He did have a sponsor. We already know the issue with the sponsorship stuff. We're not going to get into that. We know Matt DiBenedetto was potentially going to go to Kaulig Racing and Cup. There's also some rumblings and rumors maybe that Ty Dillon can make a couple of select starts in Cup. He's trying to get a Cup deal set. And remember, he was the front runner to run full-time or at least part-time with Kaulig Racing in the Cup Series. Obviously, we do know that Ty Dillon will be full-time with Rackler Racing in the Truck Series in 2024. Though when I look at the lineup that they have, and you think about Kaulig, I am a little worried about their future, at least in their Cup program. Their Xfinity Series program is very, very good. You're going to, of course, have the 10-car part-time with Daniel Dye and probably Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson at some point as well, and probably Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez. You're going to have AJ Allmendinger in the 16, Josh Williams in the 11, SVG in the 97. all around a strong lineup there. The Cup Series lineup has a lot of worries and questions. I'm worried that they're going to be taking major steps backwards and going to be one of the worst organizations in Cup, at least this season. Because like I said, Kaulig Racing has not made a ton of moves, and we already know that Kaulig Racing, they're talked in the past about selling some of their Cup Series charters. But again, going back to Josh Williams, I'm very happy he's getting the chance and opportunity to drive a Kaulig Racing in the NASCAR Cup Series this year. And again, I think he'll be able to make the best of it. He's a really talented driver. He's gifted and can get the best out of equipment. So nonetheless, a great opportunity for him. I think he'll 100% be able to make the best out of it this season. And I'm glad to see that Josh Williams will get the opportunity chance to drive for Kaulig Racing in the NASCAR Cup Series and select races. Again, the number of races are not disclosed, but it'll at least be in that 16 car for 2 races in 2024. So, that is going to be today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Links description below that, and comment below your thoughts below on today's episode. What are your thoughts about Josh Williams driving the number 16 car part-time in Cup? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about NASCAR potentially going international? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel, there will be a NASCAR video on the race picks for the Clash. There also might be the Truck Series lineup video dropping tomorrow. Friday, there's going to be a NASCAR news video dropping on the channel. And then Saturday and Sunday, we'll have stuff surrounding the Clash. I got a lot of great content dropping on the channel that I cannot wait for you guys to check out. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.